All right. Hello there again, everyone, for coming today. Thank you all so much. Please do introduce yourself in the chat to say hello as well. So my name is Noreen Sajwani, and I'm part of the DigiPharma team at IFC. And we're really excited today to have this webinar on AI within pharma. Before we sort of jump in, I just want to share a few quick notes, housekeeping, as you may call it. We've got a fantastic panel today led by Giles Newmarch, who's the Senior Investment Officer for Health and Education at IFC. With him, we're really happy to have Shuvadeep Mitra, who's the Director for Global Business Development at Novo Nordisk. And last but definitely not least, Kei David Nogami, who is the Executive Officer for the Head of Pharma Innovation BU at UB. As we get started in this webinar, please note two things. The first is that at the bottom of your screen, you should have a chat function. You can click on that and it will open on the right-hand side, the chat. Please do make sure that you have got sending it to everyone, and then you can feel free to introduce yourself and have a conversation alongside the panelists. And our second quick note is on the Q&A. So you'll also see just to the left-hand side of the chat function, there is a Q&A button. Please do feel free to click on that and then share your questions. Giles and the team on the back end will be able to look through those questions. And when we move into the panel discussion, we'll be able to ask some of those to our panelists. The final point is that once you do close the Zoom webinar, there's a survey that you'll receive upon exiting. It will only take a few minutes, and we really encourage you to please go ahead and fill that out for us. It helps us understand how to continue doing webinars like this one to support the interests that you all have. So without further ado, I will then hand over to Giles to moderate and kick us off with the session. Giles.
Thank you, Noreen. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for joining what we hope to be a very informative discussion on AI in pharma. It's my pleasure to moderate this conversation. So as some background, so I'm Giles Newmarch. I work for IFC. I cover health and education in the Asia region. So it's actually a nice pleasure to have this webinar in a kind of Asia-friendly time zone. As mentioned, I'm based in Singapore. AI and digital health is a real passion of mine. I find this topic really interesting, and as we all know, working in healthcare, it's really going to impact healthcare across all the various value chains. So I'm looking forward to learning from our panelists today. From a perspective of the format, we will ask Shiva and Kai to provide 10 to 15-minute presentation. Then the three of us will have a discussion, panelist discussion, and then we will open it up for Q&A. So please do post your questions as we go. We'll be monitoring them and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. If we can't do it verbally, we will then come back to you on the chat via through chat. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Shuva. So Shuvadeep Mitra is the Director of Corporate Integration and Strategic Alliance Global Business Development at Novo Nordisk, where he leads strategic alliances for clinical and commercial assets, diagnostics, and technology across the USA, Europe, and China. His responsibilities span alliance, life cycle management, M&A, and license governance. And maximizing value through business relationship optimization. He is currently focused on leveraging technology and artificial intelligence in advancing contracting. Prior to this, he gained deep experience in regulatory affairs, CMC, manufacturing, and sales and marketing at Novo Nordisk, and served as an R&D scientist at GSK Vaccines North America. He has also spent nearly 7 years in strategy consulting, business development with Accenture, Strategy, and Cencora, and advised emerging pharma companies in digital transformation at IFC. So Shuva, thank you very much for joining this conversation. I'll hand it over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Giles. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Great, perfect. Thanks for the warm introduction. I'll share my screen. I have a few slides to share, so just let me know when everyone can see it.
Yes, we can see it now. Thanks.
Great. So thanks, everyone. So I'm Shuva, part of Corporate Integration and Alliance Management at Novo Nordisk. We're part of Global Business Development. And today I'll share a few slides, some perspectives on the role of AI in transforming pharmaceutical operations in terms of how we see it at Novo Nordisk from an alliance management perspective. In terms of how the presentation is broken down, I'll share a few slides about the background of Novo Nordisk, as well as our perspectives on technology and AI, and then I'll substantiate that with a couple of case studies for your relevance. So just wanted to share a disclaimer that these are my views and should not be interpreted as representing the views and endorsements of the company. Great. So Novo Nordisk at a glance. We're about a bit over 100-year-old company headquartered in Denmark, where I'm based. And our purpose is to drive change to defeat serious chronic diseases built upon a strong heritage in diabetes. We're an R&D-driven company, so we pioneer scientific breakthroughs, expand access to our medicines, and really work to prevent and ultimately cure disease. From a market perspective, there are 4 key therapy areas that we're in. Our biggest areas are diabetes and obesity, as you may know, but also we have a strong foothold in rare diseases as well as cardiovascular and emerging therapy areas. From a business perspective, we supply nearly 50% of the world's insulin. We have offices in 80 countries, close to 80,000 employees, and R&D centers and strategic production sites all over the world: China, Denmark, India, UK, US, and brick production sites in Brazil as well. We also have local manufacturing in many countries. In terms of our shareholder structure and how the company is set up, our biggest shareholder, as you can see here, is our holdings company, Novo Holdings. They have about 77% of voting rights, and ultimately they're owned by a foundation. So all in all, we're a company that cannot be acquired because we're owned by a foundation, meaning that from a strategic perspective, all the investments we make in drug discovery, in digital, and AI, they're all done with a very long-term perspective. And finally, a bit about our therapy areas and our corporate strategy. Like I said, our big therapy areas are diabetes and obesity, but we also have a strong foothold in rare disease and other serious chronic diseases, really with the goal of driving change to defeat serious chronic diseases and doing this in a sustainable manner. Now, in terms of artificial intelligence, a lot has been happening at Novo Nordisk. So last year, we partnered with NVIDIA to launch one of the fastest and the biggest supercomputers in the world. So here on the left, you can see Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. You have one of our global leaders in AI and digital, and you have the King of Denmark on the right to really showcase the importance of this investment and the value this investment will bring to Novo Nordisk, not just from a drug discovery perspective, but across the value chain. We're also having new units that are being set up to drive artificial intelligence, as you can see here on the top. But at the same time, we're also partnering with many companies, and this is really important in terms of a strategy. We're not just doing things internally, we're also partnering with the external ecosystem. So here on the right, we basically did a deal with a company called Velo Health. This is an AI-driven drug discovery company, all with the goal of identifying new drug targets for various chronic diseases. And finally, as you can see here in the middle, it's not just about drug discovery. AI is something we embed across the value chain as well. In this case, it's in relation to smart manufacturing, supply chains, and ensuring that technology is integrated into our distribution and channel strategy as well. Like I mentioned, partnerships are very important. This is an alliance. Velo is an alliance that we're managing, and like I said, it's around drug discovery, therapeutic design, and clinical development. And how this partnership works is that we're using target discovery based on a large set of real-world data. We're validating that with our internal Novo Nordisk heart failure targets, and also we're exploring 3 preclinical cardiovascular disease programs, but also thinking of expanding it to some broader programs in different therapy areas as well, right? So it's not just with biotechs that we partner with. As you can see here in the middle, we also partner and collaborate with a lot of institutes, companies, be it tech companies or be it universities. So our spectrum of collaboration is quite wide and quite broad. And we also have some near-term and midterm and long-term targets, right? Our near-term targets are to explore investments in larger alliances, to really co-create and design solutions that are tailored to Novo Nordisk, and eventually kind of moving up the ladder to midterm goals, which are then investing in large-scale and high-performance computing hardware to ensure that we have the sufficient computing power for AI ambitions. In long term, it's moving into very futuristic quantum computing to really explore potential use cases. In addition to partnerships, we also have digital innovation hubs all over the world. And this is in relation to really kind of, in many ways, stay ahead of trends in local markets and identify the most promising local digital solution that can be scaled globally. We understand that sitting in headquarters, we do not have solutions for patients, for HCPs all over the world. And that's why we have these digital innovation hubs all around the world that can help us get those market insights and really create tools that are specific to patients, to regions, to HCPs for that part of the world, right? So we're really tapping into, you could say, the global ecosystem that we have. And finally, our journey has been quite recent. This is not a journey, we've had for many, many years. And it's a journey that's really based upon an internal and external setup. So in our case, we're using the best in-class clinical data within the cardiometabolic space. This is in relation to R&D. Like I showed you, we have 11 digital hubs globally in 8 different countries, and we have 30 plus AI enabling partnerships, and this is growing. And we start off our journey back in 2021, starting off with establishing an AI center of excellence with AI platforms. Then you could say moving up the value chain through partnerships, but also through these midterm and long-term investments in high-performing computing and graphic processing units as well. And this is a journey that we're continuing. It's not that it stopped. This is really something the company is really investing in because we do see the value of AI, not just from a research and development perspective, but across the value chain, right? And I'll come to some of those examples in a few seconds. So yeah, like I mentioned, research and early development, this is obviously big for us because we are an R&D driven company. When it comes to R&D, using AI for target discovery, knowledge mining, robotics to decrease design cycles, but also predictive pharmacology, finding new drug targets, new biomarkers. Clinical development perspective, it's identifying subpopulation from randomized clinical trials. We're in diabetes and obesity, but we do realize that these are complex diseases, that there's several patient subtypes, several populations that need to be targeted and addressed differently. So AI can help us identify those subpopulation, but it's also about optimizing trial design and site selection. What is the optimal number of patients you should have in a clinical trial? What should the duration of a clinical trial be? And then forecasting clinical trials and looking at patterns as well. One thing that's really important to mention is that AI is not a tool that just gives you solutions and you take it for granted. Sometimes AI is used almost as a hypothesis. You test different hypotheses using AI, and that's important to keep in mind. I think for many people in the call, production, manufacturing, and commercial might be topics of importance, and this is something we also embed. AI is something we also embed in this part of the value chain. AI is used for production optimization. It's used for deep learning and product inspections, but it's also used for process analytics. And a good example of using AI in production for us is, for instance, we've actually been able to reduce discarding of usable products. So in our case, insulin vials by up to 70%. So this is an example of AI-driven product optimization, but we're also using AI for forecasting and also for inventory management as well. Finally, from a commercial perspective, internally within the company, AI can be used for resource allocation and forecasting, but at the same time, it can be used for patient journey predictions, right? Like I mentioned, obesity, diabetes, rare diseases, these are very complex diseases that are not just driven by, they're not just driven clinically, but also complex things such as social determinants of health, right? So these patient journeys are quite complex, and AI can once again help us address these patient journeys in a more tailored way. And then at the same time, also have marketing material, but also material for medical education that can be more targeted, right? Internally, from a, you could say, company perspective, we have our internal Novo Nordisk ChatGPT and Gen AI tools to increase productivity. And from an HR perspective, AI is used for job advert generation, but also from a personal development perspective, we have AI career coaches and learning recommendations as well, right, for our development plans. So as you can see, it's used holistically, it's used across the value chain, it's used to drive business impact, but it's also used to support employees within the company. How are we doing for time, Giles? Are we good? Just let me know.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good?
Yeah, please keep going. Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah, great, thank you. So this is an example of how we use best-in-class clinical data within the cardiometabolic space. I don't want to belabor too much on the details, but I think from a conceptual point of view, it's very important to keep in mind that in order to drive AI, you need a solid foundation of data. In this case, from a clinical perspective, the richness of our data comes from our internal data points, but also combining clinical study data with real world data as well, right? So the foundation needs to be very strong, and in this case, it's the data, and then that needs to be complemented with technology and infrastructure, and very importantly, the capabilities you have within the company, so the people side of things, right? And this is an example of what you do within the clinical space. But this can be applied anywhere. It can be applied in manufacturing. It can be applied in commercial. Conceptually, it all needs to start with a rich array of data, which needs to be complemented by technology and infrastructure and the people who have the capabilities to drive those insights. Yeah, and finally, if you really want to drive business impact, you need to look at AI holistically and how it can drive enterprise value, right? In this case, this is an example of a platform called Found Data, which is a seamless infrastructure where all data from different clinical trials that are completed are pooled and really prepared for insight generation. So this platform pools that data. It's easy to find, it's easy to access, it's easy to connect, and then you're able to drive insights from that. And the important thing about such a platform is that it democratizes data across the value chain. So even though this is clinical data, this could be a benefit, not just to researchers, but also, let's say, to medical specialists, to people in commercial, to people in even supply chain management. So how can this data be democratized across the value chain so that everyone in the company is actually benefiting from these insights rather than having it siloed, right? And this is quite difficult to do. Initially at Novo Nordisk, when we embarked upon this journey, things were quite fragmented. But with time, as we're kind of going through this journey together as a company, we are more and more, we're spending our resources and efforts on seeing how we can democratize this data so that everyone in the company can benefit from this data in their individual endeavors. I have a few case studies to end off my presentation. This is around predictive analytics, predictive AI. In this case, it's about increasing accuracy in assigning cardiovascular risk versus the best clinical standards. So you start off with biomarker IDs and risk assessments, but then you're using AI models based upon human cohort data from the UK Biobank to really predict, the risk of disease for certain patient population with certain target gene candidates, right? And in this case, what we're seeing is that we're seeing around an 8% increase in accuracy to assigning cardiovascular risk to patient populations versus the best clinical standards, right? So once again, it's to show that AI is not just there to improve efficiency. It can be used in predictive analytics, which can then help with any of your either commercial marketing activities or medical activities that such results could benefit. And finally, from a documentation perspective, we've actually built an internal platform that enables automated authoring of structured documents that reduces time to regulatory submissions. So this is called NovoScribe. It's an automated authoring platform powered by AI. It creates documents in an efficient and accurate way based on defined content rules. And it's like I mentioned, it's defined in-house. And the value generated is that your document production is around 70% faster, right? So this is quite beneficial from an efficiency perspective. And then there's potential to expand this to like full submission packages, right, for your regulatory documentation. Like Giles mentioned, I work in contracting. I work in alliance management, so we do a lot of contracting with either biotechs or with partners, both in developed countries, emerging markets. We're now looking at how we can use AI to develop state-of-the-art contracts that are tailored to specific markets, that is tailored to the specific legal requirements, regulatory requirements for our markets, and also contracts that are being fed with learnings that we're getting within the company to really optimize and continuously improve the contracts, right? So this is a project we're embarking on, but it's very similar to the concept that we have here called NovoScribe. It's ultimately to do things faster, but also do things with higher quality. Yeah, so finally, just key takeaways at Novo Nordisk. We leverage in data across the value chain. That's how the business as a whole benefits from AI. We do things internally, but also external partnerships and collaborations are very important and will continue to play an important role in reaching our AI ambitions. And finally, very importantly, the successful use of AI at an organizational level, at an enterprise level, will really require you to have rich data combined with technology infrastructure and the people capabilities that are joint at an enterprise level. You don't want these things to be disjointed, to be fragmented. You really want them to be well stitched and in a manner where it is being shared across the enterprise so all business units can benefit from it. Great. So yeah, those were just some perspectives, a point of view from my end in alliance management and how we look at AI. So Giles, over to you.
Thank you, Shiva. And maybe I actually have a question for you now, if that's possible.
Yes, of course.
And thank you for that presentation. Really interesting. And obviously, you can see your natural progression. It's very diverse, and obviously, there's a lot going on. How have you built out your team? Did you start with a digital healthcare team and then just over time looked at new technologies? How have you invested in that team to understand and kind of analyze and kind of implement new AI technologies that are coming through, understanding that it's only AI is kind of obviously it's been around for a while, but has really taken off over the last couple of years. So to catch up and try and keep, as you say, keep ahead of the competition. How are you doing that? Because that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's a great question, Giles. And I think different companies have different ways of addressing this, right? So the way we do it, the way I do it, for instance, in my area in alliance management, all of this stems from the business need. It comes from the line of business, right? How do we differentiate ourselves? What do we need to do? What do we need to do to stay ahead of the competition? But also with a very patient-centric perspective, I would say customer-centric perspective, right? Both looking at the patients, but also looking at the HCPs, right? What are their needs? What are they telling us? What are their pain points? So taking all those insights and really working with our specialists in digital, because not everyone's an expert in digital, and not everyone's an expert in patient journeys, right? So how are we able to, you could say, feed those insights to our digital experts to then co-create something that works, right? So that's how we go about, you could say, addressing it. And we do it this way just to ensure that, we don't get bogged down by the details of technology, but ultimately our focus is purely on the patient and the business need, on the HCPs, on the doctors, right? The end customer. So that's how we go about doing that.
Thanks for that. That's great. So thanks for that presentation. Now, Kei, maybe if we move it over to you. As a short introduction, Kei Nogami is the Executive Officer and Head of Pharma Innovation at UBI, driving strategic partnerships with pharmaceutical companies to accelerate innovation and patient-centric transformation. Prior to joining UBI in 2021, Kei built a strong foundation in corporate strategy, new business development, operational transformation, and full-scale organizational design as a management consultant. He held leadership roles at global consulting firms, including Kearney, Arthur D. Little, advising clients across diverse industries. His leadership philosophy centers on pragmatic action, strategic foresight, and an unwavering commitment to tangible results. So thanks very much, Kei. Over to you for your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the great presentation. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Kei Nogami from UB. So today I'm excited to introduce you to UB, a health tech startup from Tokyo, Japan, and how we are working on to revolutionize the way people access healthcare. And also, I would like to present how AI, especially generative AI, is already changing the patient and HCP experience, and how we collaborate with pharmaceutical companies in Japan to make the good use of it. So let me share my screen. Okay. All right. So let me skip my introduction. Okay, so UB is a health tech company founded in May 2017, and a biomedical doctor and engineer. So our founders are Kota Kubo and Dr. Yoshinori Abe. And as March of 2025, we have grown to like 240 employees with locations in Japan and New York in the United States. And I'm also thrilled to share a recent significant development. UB and Google made a strategic partnership in our latest financing round. This is more than just an investment. Both UB and Google have agreed to collaborate on advancing the digital transformation of Japan's medical ecosystem. And we'll be leveraging digital innovation, including, of course, AI, and to achieve this goal. And this partnership, underscores our commitment to innovation and our drive to improve healthcare accessibility and efficiency through technology. All right. So this leads into our core mission at UB, which is simple yet profound: to develop our healthcare guide for everyone. So what is the core problem we're addressing? It's the pain, the lack of information that often detours patients, whether diagnosed or not, from accessing proper treatment. So for example, undiagnosed patients are often unsure about their severity of their symptoms, if they need to see a doctor or not, or which nearby medical institution to visit. And similarly, diagnosed patient may question if their current treatment is truly the best option, and perhaps they might be unaware of the latest treatment options, or not know what specific points to discuss with their physicians. So to address these challenges, we call multi-sided platform designed to drive better care for everyone involved in the healthcare journey, starting from the patients, or maybe consumers, potential patients. We offer AI symptom checker for mainly undiagnosed patients, which has 7 million monthly active users in Japan, and healthcare encyclopedia for diagnosed patients with 6.5 million monthly active users as well. And for healthcare providers, we have AI health assistant used in 1,700 facilities in Japan, and UB generative AI utilized by 50 plus hospitals in Japan. These services are streamlining the paperwork internally of the hospitals, or in order to increase the patient facing time for physicians or maybe other healthcare professionals, we leverage AI to help them. And finally, for our pharma partners, pharmaceutical companies, we offer UB Patient Navigator and UB Case Finder. So we've collaborated with 30 plus life science firms on more than 300 projects. So our solution is to deliver like tailored medical information. So we do this by dynamically adjusting questions based on the input symptoms and segmenting users correctly. And it is quite simple. User answer simple questions about their symptoms. Then they see relevant disease information and can find rated doctors or search for a nearby clinic. And a little bit busy slide. So UB accompanies the patient's every step of the way, connecting them to the right care at the right time and with the right information for the right population. So let me break down a little bit. So we reach motivated users when they are looking for information over the internet, like Google or Yahoo or those kind of search engines, or maybe perhaps some people are coming from social media as well. And we filter them throughout the questionnaire in order to make traffic into the right population segmentation. And by doing so, we identify from the standpoint of the pharmaceutical companies, we can help them to identify, brand eligible users and suspected diagnosed patients with AI. And we provide information patients with the relevant materials or, connect them to the right care. So also, we navigate and support their medical visit. And we also help them we help escort them through ongoing management as well. And we follow up to engage repeatedly, even outside of UB's platform, for example, by using UB data to retarget users or through our AI agent, which is called UP. So let me introduce what UB does with generative AI. So our AI character, UP, aims to be the closest partner to the patients. So empowering their journeys and guiding, each patient toward the right care by helping them gather information and discuss their health concerns. So this is more like ChatGPT, but what differs from general those services, ChatGPT or Gemini, there's 2 points. We only provide the authorized medical information. So we harness this AI in the background. So we provided the only approved medical information to the end users. So that's number one. And number two, and this is, I think, more critical. So our AI remembers the past consultation data or other data. For example, their vitals or other conditions or symptoms. So we remember everything so that we can provide more tailor-made information to our users. So this is a little bit different from ChatGPT or other generative AI services in the market. Okay. All right. And looking ahead, our vision for UB in, let's say, 2030 is to be a hybrid platform, guiding 30 million users that's a wild figures, but users to appropriate care, whether it's routine or advanced. So we aim to be the first touch point for healthcare actions, integrating digital spaces like social media and web search, or maybe from other generative AI services like ChatGPT. And also, we have a touch point in physical spaces like medical institutions or maybe even shops. So we have already partnered with the 7-Eleven Japan to gain more physical touch points, especially from the perspective of the age segmentation. So our digital service is mainly used by like 30, 40, 30s or 40s, or maybe 20s. Of course, we serve, UB alone for elderly people as well. But in order to enhance our touch point, we leverage our partnership who have the strong touch point with patients, especially elderly patients, including elderly people as well. So UB will act as a medical action agent, properly guiding patients to services like telemedicine. Yes, we do provide telemedicine services by ourselves as well. And also we help them to find right GPs as well, or maybe specialists to follow. And also for the diagnosed patients, we support for the patient support program. So to continue their treatment in order to get the best return from the treatment as well. And all while leveraging UB data, potentially integrate with national systems like My Number here in Japan. This is kind of social security number-ish thing in Japan that records all the medical data or other, prescription history. So yeah, as we are waiting for the panel discussion, so I should stop here. So as a closing, at UB, we are committed to bridging the information gap in healthcare and ensuring that everyone can navigate their, health journey and confidence with confidence and clarity. Yeah. So I'd like to speak about what this kind of patient touchpoint or new patient experience, or maybe for HCP experience, can, what does it mean, and also what does it mean for pharmaceutical company, especially from the perspective of the commercial business. I mean, marketing, MR activities. So this kind of topics is going to be covered by through the panel discussion. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I'd happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. And I have a quick question for you as well before we go into the panel discussion. Can you just provide an overview of the reasoning why Google partner with Ubi? It'll be good to understand what they saw in your business and how the partnership is working and what both parties are getting from it.
Yeah. So I need to double check with how deep I can share the information with my PR team. But basically, the short thing is that we have the strong, user base in Japan in healthcare industry. So at this moment, we have not 30, but 13 million monthly active users. So that is, one of the value that Google might feel when they, consider the partnership. And also, I think the vision of UB, what we are trying to achieve, is somehow aligned with Google's, mission in the context of the healthcare, so to guiding the people to the right treatment. So yeah, that's part of the reason why the partnership, we made it through. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Kai. And one last question, because I've seen that a few have been asked in this area around working with government and regulations. Obviously, Japan is known to be quite a conservative market from a regulatory perspective. How have you kind of worked with the regulator to do more in this kind of digital realm?
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. I think that's a great question, first of all. We also actively participate in rulemaking through industry associations, the government, and other entities as well. So we essentially address these issues by establishing like data handling regulations and guidelines as well. Actually, we are one of the first I'm sorry, private company who are engaged in the publish of the generative AI guidelines in the healthcare industry in Japan that is managed by Japanese government. So by doing so, we are not trying to be the like how should I say we are trying to be innovative, but we at the same time we are trying to be um, ecosystem friendly. So we don't break anything. We improve the ecosystem, but we don't break anything. So that kind of partnering with the not only the the companies but also the government or rule makers is quite important. So that's the point where also putting so much resources as well.
Yeah, got it. Thank you for that. And so maybe if we move into the discussion and so we have a few questions for the panelists, and maybe Shuva, you can go first to let Kei have a rest from talking. And this is in the area of personalized medicine, precision medicine. So, in what ways is AI enhancing personalized medicine and patient-specific treatment plans in the pharma sector?
Great. No, great question, Giles, and a question we grapple with every day in order to make treatment plans personalized and patient-centric, right? So I think there are multiple answers to that question, Giles. I think the way we look at it is ultimately we want to really understand the patient better, and how do we go about doing that, right? And that's quite complex and difficult as well. So you can look at it from an R&D perspective. So AI can, for instance, like I mentioned, chronic disease is a very complex disease, and you have many patient subtypes. So how do you understand, how do you stratify the patients better? AI can help you do that. Are there new biomarkers that we're seeing? Um, are there kind of certain clinical markers that we're seeing when it comes to adverse event prediction? So ultimately, from a clinical side of thing, AI can help us understand the patient better, but at the same time, complementing that with things around social determinants of health, right? Are you coming from a developed country? Are you coming from a developing country? Within a developing country, are you coming from a certain region that generally tends to have a high risk of disease? So how are you combining those social elements with the clinical elements, ultimately to do some sort of risk segmentation, right? Are you a high risk patient? Are you a middle risk patient? Are you a low risk patient? That can then help you come up with the relevant interventions, but also you could say the relevant treatment plans, right? That's one thing. The other thing is also these days you're using this in the commercial side of things, the medical side of things, but I've also seen it being used in many companies on the manufacturing floors. It's this concept of digital twins. How can you simulate either a production site, but to your question around patients, how can you simulate, patient journeys digitally that can help you come up with the relevant treatment outcomes, right? I can give you one example in Novo Nordisk and what we do. Like I said, we're in the insulin business. That's a big part of our business. And with insulin, you have these insulin pens, which are injectors, right? So in many of our insulin pens, we actually have artificial intelligence that helps the patient optimize their dosing based on what time of their dose, what time they're dosing, how much they need to dose. So that's an example of how we're embedding AI in not just in diagnostics, but in this case, like injectable in insulin pens, right? So
That's great. Thanks for that. And over to you, Kei.
Okay, so yeah, this is a great question actually. And before I dive into the specifics, I'd like to share a core belief that or maybe we at UB hold quite strongly, is that AI is now for everyone. So for a long time, AI in the pharmaceutical or maybe a healthcare space might have been perceived as, something predominantly for R&D specialists, data scientists, or the tech people in your organization. However, that landscape is rapidly changing. And so a significant catalyst for this shift, I believe, has been the emergence and the remarkable advancements in generative AI. So this is the standpoint of this discussion, I believe. And from that perspective, how should I say, Gen AI in a very tangible way, democratize access to AI's capability. So it's, made these powerful tools more intuitive, more accessible, and more, readily applicable across entire pharmaceutical value chain. So to answer your question, well, yeah, in any kinds of business value chain, for example, in the drug discovery phase, AI assists in efficiently identifying therapeutic targets expected to be effective for patient group with a specific like genetic mutation or biomarkers, as discussed. And also in clinical development, actually we UB support the clinical recruitment for pharmaceutical companies, but AI enables more precise patient segmentation and is useful in building models that predict how individual patients will respond to specific therapies. And also in real world clinical settings, AI maybe can analyze real world data to support like the creation of more tailored treatment plans, such as selecting the optimal existing drug, or adjusting dosage based on like an each individual patient's conditions or daily activities, or maybe background factors. So this kind of personalization, tailor-made approach for patients, and both for patients and as HCP, is something already happened and mainly driven by generative AI these days.
I think what's really interesting is that, Sam, when we're talking about personalized medicine, it's always, and this is my perspective, I always think about developed markets, expensive treatments, small cohorts of that's going to be available to small cohorts of people. Do you see, as you said, the democratization of AI's ability to kind of overcome those barriers, make it more affordable, kind of potentially leapfrog and do more in these emerging markets? Be good to get your views on that, Kei, and then maybe Shuva. Kei, do you want to go first on that?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Surely. I believe so. So in the developing countries where the medical access is quite limited, so AI can be one of the like home doctor in your pocket. So for example, if AI can provide the initial screening or pre-diagnosis information, and maybe we can deliver RX directly to their locations throughout the maybe other technologies for the logistics maybe. So I strongly believe that the access to the medical information or medical treatment itself can be leveraged by AI and other advancing technologies, I believe.
Great. And Shiva, are you seeing this happening in kind of in the real world at this moment in time? Are you seeing that the technology is bringing down prices and making it more accessible?
Yeah, definitely, Giles. I mean, you're seeing AI being used across the value chain, right? So there are cost drivers across the value chain, and you can drive efficiency at every step of the value chain. And of course, that brings down cost. But also to your point, Giles, like this is also quite, I wouldn't say as big yet in emerging markets, but it's very growing and there's a lot of untapped potential when it comes to how we use this because, like I said, chronic diseases are huge in emerging markets. So if you look at just patient volumes, that's where the potential is. But that's also where the complexity is. And then the complexity from a the social determinants of health perspective, right? But the question is here, how can we use AI to gather insights based not just on, clinical parameters, but the social determinant of health parameters, and then ultimately come up with content, be it educational material, be it marketing material that's actually tailored to like specific subtypes, right? And that can be difficult simply because getting data is difficult in many parts of the world. But that's also something, we need to work with, and that's just how the markets are, right? So I think that's going to be like the next, you could say, wave of AI. How are we able to make more accurate prediction based on limited data, right? So I think that's where the field is going. At least that's where my intuition or what my feelings and thoughts tell me.
Yeah, and it's a good point on that data. And we're definitely seeing in Asia, a lot of the middle income countries are really investing, the governments are investing a lot of time and money to develop systems to capture that data, and even developing biobanks as well, with the understanding of kind of the trends in technology, how it's going to help the overall healthcare system be more efficient and improve the efficacy. So I think it's a really good point there. So moving on to the next question, and this is really around focused on growth and how can AI help companies grow. So how can AI-driven customer segmentation and targeting improve marketing strategies in competitive markets? Over to you, Shuva.
Yeah, so I think there are a few things you can do. First thing is, if you have a certain molecule, how can we use AI to see whether we can find new indications for that molecule, right? So then you're opening up a new avenue for business, but also to address an unmet need, right? So that's one way of looking at, you could say, new market opportunities, new indications. But also with AI, I mean, looking at kind of, you could say, competitive intelligence, competitor insights, you can kind of parse through that data with AI and get some kind of hypothesis on what emerging trends could be, right? From an unmet patient needs, but also from a treatment paradigm perspective. And finally, I would say monitoring competitive intelligence, powered through AI, right? So you could say in many ways developing models to see what your competitors are doing, what their pipelines are doing, market access trends, scenario planning. That can help a lot, I think, with your marketing plans. But at the same time, I think where AI is going is that, and I think this was mentioned before by Kai, is also around segmentation, right? You're moving away from your traditional segmentation models to more of a behavioral segmentation model, right? Which HCPs, are high potential for engagement? What are their unmet needs? What are their preferences? How can we personalize content for them? How would they like that content be delivered? Would they like that to be delivered face to face through webinars such as this, online bite-sized content? So I think all of those insights are extremely important from an engagement perspective. And I think that's where, the market is going. AI is also helping us identify niche prescribers in certain regions and also underserved HCPs as well, right? So I think all of this holistically is really opening up, you could say, new business opportunities for healthcare companies.
Yeah, that's great. And Kai, maybe good to get your views on this.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. AI has the power to bring significant transformation for pharmaceutical marketing strategy, especially in customer segmentation and targeting. This is even more critical now, as you roughly pointed out. AI capabilities, particularly generative AI, are becoming democratized. So we must operate under the assumption that your competitors are also leveraging these tools to their, to some extent. So failing to do so means risking a rapid loss of competitive edge, I believe. And from the different point of view, traditionally segmentation was often based on the, I shall say, well, relatively broad categories like age, gender, or the history or click or these kind of, I should say, very basic categories. So, however, AI allows for much more, mouth-based, let's say, and detailed segmentation based on patient-specific like symptom complaints, their attitudes towards treatment, for example, or maybe even, behaviors, or maybe even healthcare professionals, specialists, and areas of interest. So I should say this granu- granularity is a key, in the competitive market, I believe. So from the standpoint of pharmaceutical companies, to more accurately identify patient or HCP groups who, really need specific information or for whom particular treatment might be most suitable, it's about moving from, broad strokes to micro segmentation or micro targeting. So consequently, personalized marketing is delivering optimized message and content through the most effective channels for these precise segments becomes more achievable and more, necessary. So the result isn't just improved ROI through, optimized resource allocation and reduced, wasted reach, let's say, and more importantly, in the competitive environment, providing highly relevant, variable, and most importantly, maybe a timely information to, individual customers, not only for healthcare professionals, but also the patient themselves. So this level of tailored interaction powered by AI is becoming, like fundamental requirement to maintain and grow, market share, I believe.
Yeah. As a follow-on question for you, Kai, as a startup, young business, do you see it as a differentiator? You can move quicker. You understand the technology, move quicker. You're seeing that helping
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So not only the competitiveness of ourselves, but also the, we partner with the, many pharmaceutical companies in Japan, but we already observed the gap, for the adoption of the new technology. So as we all know that the industry is strongly regulated, but if you are not taking any risk of it, you will fall behind. So that kind of the balancing the risk versus applying new technology is going to be very, very critical in order to maintain the competitiveness in this market.
Great, thanks for that. Okay, keeping on the theme of growth, I think what role does predictive analytics play in identifying new market opportunities and consumer trends? Shiva, maybe if you can answer this question first. Thanks.
Yeah, sure, Giles. And I think I alluded to it in my previous response, but
Yeah.
ultimately, I think it really comes down to identifying the emerging trends, right? What are the unmet patient needs that we're missing out on through our, you could say, traditional competitor intelligence activities, right? New treatment paradigms as well. Anything new coming up, anything that can really help us deliver those patient outcomes that we're looking for, right? So, in that sense, yeah, I would say these are kind of some of the things you're seeing. But I think what I also wanted to highlight actually is, and you're seeing this in many companies, is the importance of, you could say, AI when it comes to forecasting, both from a, you could say, commercial perspective, but also you could say from a supply chain perspective as well. So, predicting supply demand in a very competitive market, reducing production waste. I think Kai referred to, waste in general, but also, machine learning algorithms to optimize inventory as well, right? So all of this, these cost drivers are super beneficial alongside, like I mentioned, identifying, emerging market trends and unmet patient needs and new treatment paradigms, right? That could help us identify those new market opportunities.
Great, excellent. Kai, over to you.
Yeah, so this is a great point. AI-driven predictive analytics plays vital role for the pharmaceutical industry in discovering new market opportunities and anticipating consumers, that is patient and healthcare professional, trends. So by learning and recognizing complex patterns hidden in, vast amounts of, past data, or maybe, live data, let's say, AI can capture signs of the future that might be, overlooked by humans, enabling more, data-driven and proactive strategy development. For instance, by integrating and analyzing epi epidemiological data, environmental data, or maybe and a human behavior data. So it's going to be possible to predict, macro trends such as the spread of specific infections, disease, or future increase in, patient numbers for lifestyle-related disease associated with aging. And also, by analyzing keywords, patients searching for regarding symptoms or diagnostic data from medical institutions, it's going to be also possible to estimate the scale of unmet medical needs, as Shiva mentioned, that have yet to be surfaced, or maybe the size of undiagnosed potential patients population. So we already providing the data of undiagnosed potential patients, but this estimation is based on very traditional approach. So we really don't know how many undiagnosed potential patients are really existing at this stage. But in the very near future, it's going to be very crystal clear, thanks to by this kind of analysis as well. So what I want to say here is that predictive analytics, excels at forecasting acceptance and adoption patterns when new drugs or innovative digital health technology are introduced, how quickly, in which regions, and by which types of patients or healthcare professionals they will be embraced. So this allows pharmaceutical companies to more effectively prioritize product development, more market lean product development, and plan go-to-market strategy. So this is kind of, I believe, the reason why I think this question is great is that this is kind of hidden game changer. So when we speak about AI, we tend to, only see the tech side, right? So for example, you take a picture of your symptom. Wow, this might be correct. This is great. Yeah, this is also great. But what means here is that, how we make a use of it and how we convert those, edgy cases into your basic daily strategy or business operation is something we need to always be, aware of.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you make there, and it's actually an area that I hadn't really considered. What is the addressable market opportunity, right? It's sometimes in a lot of these markets that we look at, it's very difficult to understand what is the latent opportunity, right? If you can have that predictive analytics to help you understand that allows you to deploy your resources more efficiently, I think. So I think that's very useful.
Yeah, I
just wanted
to add one point to that, Giles, because you just got me excited about predictive analytics. If you just broaden from, you could say, a pharmaceutical company to the broader healthcare system, one of the benefits of AI, or rather we envision the benefits of AI would be around risk segmentation. Which patients would be high risk, which patients would be middle risk, and which patients would be low risk, right? Because ultimately you want a healthcare system and a healthcare model that's focused on early interventions and prevention. So if you can identify these patients early on in their journey and intervene early on, I think you're ultimately moving towards a model which is less costly, but at the same time, you're achieving those superior health outcomes much early on, right? So, and I think all the data that we have, crunching through all those numbers and coming up with insights using AI will be extremely important, if we're trying to move towards this model.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, and you mentioned it earlier in your presentation, when you're looking at the patient journey, that will be really interesting around how you apply that to predictive analytics to understand kind of where can you do cost savings, but also where in the system, but then also where is the opportunity to drive growth as well. Quite interesting. Okay, so I think that was a good panel discussion. I think we covered a lot of topics. I think for each one of those questions we could have spoken for many hours. So maybe we can stop there and go to the Q&A. It looks like the questions are stacking up. Noreen, how would you like to do this? Have you been kind of reviewing them and selected a few for the panel?
Yeah, I can do so. I think a lot of the questions that we were seeing were addressed either in the conversation around sort of medical, legal regulations, things like that. There was one that was a question around ethics and having kind of trustworthy criteria for AI and referencing. I wonder if the team has anything to say on that topic. So are there kind of any ethical frameworks or kind of references that we can use that have been, for example, approved by the international standards community, or maybe examples of that you could share?
That is a great question. So may I go first? Okay.
Please do.
Yeah. So regarding ethical AI use, it is very important to recognize potential biases in AI algorithm and take, technical and organizational measures to eliminate or mitigate them. So explainability, which involves, presenting the rationale for AI's conclusion or recommendation in a way human can understand, is also essential for building trust. So the principle that, final medical judgments are always made by human experts with AI positioned as a powerful support tool. So this must be upheld at this moment, at least in 2025. So this is my, first answer. And also to tackle these challenges, in addition to individual corporate efforts, industry-wide formulation of, voluntary guidelines and, constructive dialogue with regulatory authorities is also important. So improving AI literacy across society is also a key factor. And I hope IFC can one of the, great leader in this domain so that, not, how should I say, pushing the, push, giving the pressure on AI or new use of, technology. Instead, make a great use of it with the, with the guardrail, let's say. So that is something we need very much.
Thank you, Kai. Shiva, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Kai. And just a couple of words on my end. Yeah, when you're developing these models, obviously you have to follow the legal and regulatory framework, right? But also monitoring those frameworks because those are also evolving across the world, right? So that's one thing. But what Kai also mentioned is just having very strong internal guardrails. Because ultimately, and I think I presented like a pyramid, right? Everything is founded on that backbone of data. And if that data is biased, if that's not diverse, if that's not rich, ultimately what the AI is spewing out will not be that great either, right? So yeah, I mean, totally agree, having those strong guardrails, but I think also keeping in mind that whatever the AI initially gives you, not to take it for granted completely, but almost in many ways using it as a tool for hypothesis testing as well. And that's something we do a lot. We use AI to test our hypotheses, to validate certain hypotheses, and then really have discussions within our team and within a team of human experts, so to speak, as to how to progress, right? So it's a support function. It's not something that just gives you answers and you take for granted, right? And it's something to keep in mind, given where we are in the digital journey for artificial intelligence at present.
Yeah, I think, and I was just looking at some of the questions, and that covers off one around, or addresses most of the question around, how does AI, digital technologies, work with healthcare professionals? How do you encourage them to use it as well? I think, as you were saying, technology is an enabler. It doesn't lead the business. And also, a lot of stakeholder engagement, communication, open transparency is really important. And as you say, having those internal ethics and principles that your organization adheres to and governs and enforces is very, very important.
Thanks, all. I'm going to just pull together maybe a few questions since they talk about a similar theme, which is on access. And we have Ehlam that said in a content like Africa, for a significant portion of the population, you've got basic things like online registration that could be very difficult. So what can we sort of do from an AI perspective to be more inclusive or user friendly? And Kai, I think, Dr. Augusta also said, for example, in your case, or were there age groups, maybe the elderly population, where, again, from that accessibility point of view, adoption of technology is a lot more difficult. So it would be great to kind of understand maybe from a global side, Shiva, kind of that point around access and accessibility, and then Kai, from your perspective as well, how you've been able to engage others.
Yeah, really good question. So from an access perspective, in developing markets, what I didn't have in one of my slides is, you could say, the strong investments we have when it comes to local partnerships, right? I showed you manufacturing sites around the world, but what I did not include in my slide deck there was our various local manufacturing sites, right? So in very high volume countries, India, Bangladesh, Iran, Algeria, we actually have local manufacturing there to ensure access is addressed. But from an AI technology perspective, this also comes down to local partnerships, right? So that's why, as you saw from my deck, we have these digital innovation hubs that are scattered globally precisely to address this point. What does the local market need? What are, you could say, some of the local technology players? What is the local ecosystem looking like? And how can we partner as a big pharma sitting in Europe with many of these local players that know more about the local markets and have much deeper and richer insights of the market, and how we can create these, win-win partnerships to really drive solutions that are tailored to that part of the world, right? So for us, in one sentence, or rather in one word, it's all about partnerships with local players.
Yeah, this is a great question. So, to be very transparent with you, I'm not an expert for the access for in the development countries. So I'd like to answer, from the perspective of the age groups, or adoption for the elderly people. So in our experience, adoption is generally broad if the tool is really user friendly and clearly valuable. In our cases, while some older adults might be less familiar with digital tools, initially resistance is often more tied to overall digital literacy than age itself. So this is key point. So it's not about age, it's about literacy, right? So we focus on simple design and demonstrating clear benefits, like helping understand symptoms, or when to see a doctor, or we, for example, in UB case, so we show users are genuinely, very open to receive information through such platforms when they see its utility. And also, we get the continuous feedback to improve accessibility for everyone. And we sometimes, this is a true story, we go to parks and have elderly people try out our product to gather real time feedback, not only from the digital side, but also we ask them, do you have a minute? And can you try this product and give me the direct feedback? Something this kind of more even though the theme of this the webinar is AI, but this kind of human to human relationship is kind of spice we need to always be aware of in order to build in a real forms of the user friendly. So we overuse like user friendly user experience. Yes, that is okay, but in order to make a truly user friendly experience, we need to be more like how should I say get out of your office and speak with the users. So this is might be the kind of key takeaway in order to be more I should say, available for everyone.
Yeah, I think that customer adoption piece
That's right.
is vital to understand, and I think Shuva touched on it earlier, right? You need to give the end user, the patient, the customer, the choice of how they access healthcare or the technology or the service that they're looking to use, and trying to make that user interface as simple and as straightforward as possible. And I think you generally look at the kind of healthcare system, and I think other sectors as well. I think that area, that user interface, is getting better and better, and I think they're learning. Companies are learning from that. When you see adoption, you tend to see other sectors do it better, and then watching healthcare companies kind of learn from that and bring those learnings into their business.
Absolutely. So this is what other industries always doing, like breathing, right? So for example, if you were working at Coca-Cola, so you get the any kinds of digital feedback throughout every kinds of channel, digital, local, or whatever you name it. But this used to be a little bit not impossible, but very hard to obtain in healthcare space because we didn't have like the platform to gather those kind of real world data, users feedback data, because medicines are provided through the mainly hospitals or in other medical institutions. So the data in the hospital is quite structured and quite deep, and we could analyze those data, of course, through the AI. But the missing link is their daily activities. We don't really know what patients are, spending their daily lives, So this kind of data structure. So we often, use the notion that the garbage in, garbage out. So we don't say this data is garbage, but it was really hard for us to obtain the structured data from the daily lives of the patients or users. But in that context, generative AI is very, changing the landscape because even if the input is not structured, we can use AI in order to sort those information into the structured data, and then we can, make analysis. So this is maybe one of the other aspect of the how AI can, change the landscape of the pharmaceutical industry or even other healthcare space as well.
Amazing. Thanks both. And I think maybe we've got one final question that we can ask you all, an uplifting one to close out the session in this webinar. Olu has very rightly asked, where do you see AI's role across the pharma ecosystem in a few years' time? That could be kind of from a positive effects, but maybe also some of the challenges that we might be seeing with AI in the pharma ecosystem. Kai, would you like to go ahead? Go for it.
Oh, should I? Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I should say. So in the very near future, AI will likely to be, able to analyze an individual, even genetic background, lifestyle, environment factors, and even maybe mental state to predict risks and route or early stage, long before symptoms appear, enabling personalized preventive interventions as well. And if illness should occur, therapies perfectly tailored to the individual and by minimizing side effect and maximizing efficacy. So this could be, designed and delivered by AI. But at the same time, in such a world, patients' daily health data, responses to treatment and changes in quality of life would be, need to be securely and seamlessly shared via AI platforms of course, with their permission. So yes, the future is bright, I believe. However, we need to be very careful and we should never leave patients behind. We always need to be open to patients, speak with them, and get the permission if we could use your data in order to improve your experience. So, from the provider side, we always think or imagine or believe, sometimes blindly, the users, the patients, really needs this without hearing their voices. Yes, AI is something going to change the world. However, we need to be very patient-centric at the same time in order to make the ecosystem better and better. So, yeah, I think, realizing this vision, holds the potential to transform the business model of the pharmaceutical industry and ultimately contribute to the extension of healthy lifespans for society as a whole and the achievement over higher quality of life. But at the same time, we need to be very modest at the same time. So that's my, I should say, closing quote. Yeah.
Yeah, and I very much echo with what was just said, what Kai just mentioned. I think the challenges will always be around, or rather the opportunities and challenges you could say would be around making sure data is inclusive. We're leaving no one behind. And our data is rich, it's diverse. We're removing as much bias as possible, but also making sure data is secure, right? Like none of this data is leaked, and then we're doing that within the legal guardrails and frameworks, right? From you could say an opportunity, like a daily, day-to-day opportunity, I think AI will play a huge role in lifestyle management. Your physical activity, your mental health, um, dietary intake. And I think that will allow people to just have more ownership. They'll be more empowered to really prioritize their health, and looking at health holistically. And yeah, and I think it's a tool for empowerment in many ways. So that's how I see it.
Great. Thanks for that. And I think that's kind of coming up to time. So it's been a really interesting kind of open discussion on this topic. As I mentioned, obviously we could go on and on this on various points that we've covered. But I think we need to draw this to a close. I think as a moderator, I'd just like to highlight some of the key points. I know Zoom does this now, but I'm still going to go ahead and highlight it because I do have a bias, and I think there are certain areas that we need to kind of flag here. I think when we're looking at AI in pharma and bringing it into the business and using it, it needs to be business driven decision making. It needs to be customer and patient centric. And like all technology, it's an enabler, which allows the business to use effectively. The second point and last point that I'd like to touch on, and I think this was clear throughout, you need the right building blocks to use AI within your business. And without them, it's ineffective. So you need the foundation, you need data, you need the right technology, you need the right infrastructure to hold that technology, and most importantly, you need the people to understand it and use it effectively. What we do see in the region is healthcare organizations are at different levels of maturity in their digital transformation. And that is really important to understand. So where is your business? What do you need to achieve in getting the right building blocks in place to utilize AI as effectively as possible? And that's very relevant to understand where you are on that journey, and then to understand what you need and where you want to be and try and address that delta. So I'll stop there. I'd like to kind of lastly just thanks very much to Kei and Shuva for spending the last 90 minutes kind of educating and discussing AI, educating those who have dialed in, but also discussing and sharing their knowledge. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you to everyone for joining and participating. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good kind of day ahead wherever you are in the world. Thank you.